Hi, I'm AJ from Better Furniture, and this channel is about making money with CNC machines, woodworking, and furniture design. A lot of people wish they could have a CNC machine, but they can't afford one because they don't have a workshop or a garage. And some may even live in a rental house like I do. I often have to move to a different house that can be in a different city or even on a different island. So I always have to make sure that my tools and equipment are either easy to transport or cheap so that I can leave them behind and buy new ones in the new place. This time, I'm building a brand new CNC workshop right inside of this rental house, and I will document the whole process so I can show you how this can be achieved. And the first thing I have to build is, of course, the CNC table. Tables for CNC machines are tricky and essential. They must be really heavy and strong to make sure they don't shake when the machine makes rapid movements. If you have a flimsy CNC table, that will either affect the quality of your machine cuts or it will limit its speed. So my first requirement for the CNC table is that it must be as heavy as possible. The second requirement is the size. I have a WorkBee 1550, which is 5 by 5 feet. But the table should also have some space for electrics, laptop, and some tools, so it has to be at least 6 by 6 feet. The third requirement, I should be able to bring it through a door of a common residential house, and that means I should be able to disassemble it at least partially. This contradicts with the requirement that the table has to be strong and solid, so I will have to be creative. And finally, the table has to be affordable, because someday I may have to move to another country and leave everything behind like I did so many times, and I don't want to have hard feelings giving this table away. With all that said, I would like to introduce you to my new CNC table that I called the Blue Whale. This table weighs 1000 pounds, which is around 450 kilograms, and most of that weight is stored in these buckets. Currently, I filled them up with water, 100 liters each, but I think it's better to use sand in the future. The tabletop is made from two flush doors, painted and screwed to the buckets, and I will show you how I attach them later. Whenever I want to move to another house, I can take off the doors, fold them together, empty the buckets, stack them into each other, and then bring this table to another house in a truck, SUV, or even on the roof of a sedan. I spent only $180 making this table, and I will break down all the costs at the end of this video, so stay tuned. The table doesn't require any power tools to make, and there's no complex joinery involved. Any person with no woodworking experience can build it in just a couple of days. So if you are interested in building such a table, or you just like watching how others build stuff on YouTube, I filmed the whole process for you, so let's watch how it was made. In the previous video, I mentioned that I bought 4 of these big plastic buckets and 2 of the cheapest flush doors I could find. As soon as the doors were delivered to me, I tried walking on one of them to test the shell strength, and it didn't go well. My heel simply went through the door. Turns out, its outer layer is made of very thin laminate. So I bought these 4 sheets of 3mm plywood that I will cut to size and cover both doors on both sides. First, I need to trace the door to the plywood. So I put the door on it, make sure all the corners are aligned, and then trace the sides of the door using a pencil. I then use my simple circular saw guide that I made earlier. It helps cutting plywood in straight lines. I filmed the process of making it, so if anyone is interested, let me know in the comments and I will edit and upload a video about it. The guide clumps over the pencil line and makes it much easier to follow. I made a small mistake and cut the door below, but luckily this won't affect my build. My circular saw guide is not long enough to cut the long side, so this time I will use the door as the guide. I just need to make a 29mm offset from the door to the line, because it's the distance between the side and the blade of my tool. Next, I need to screw the plywood to the door. I like using this center punch that will make small holes wherever it's applied. These tiny holes will guide the screw and simplify the job. I will use these 18mm long screws. I chose them because they should go through exactly half of the material. I find the door centers and quarters and add more screws there. I draw a line right in the middle of the door, and this way I have two squares of the same size. I will mount a bucket in the center of each square, so I draw crossings in each one. To mount the buckets, I will use the covers that came with them. But the problem is that they have these handles that stand on my way. I decided to cut them off with an oscillating tool. I got these flathead, large cap screws to hold the bucket covers. This won't be the strongest bond, but these screws won't experience any pulling force and should be enough to prevent any lateral movements. I align the bucket cover to the cross lines I made earlier and then screw it to the door. The initial test concerned me a bit. The bucket mount didn't feel rigid, but I was still hoping the table will become stronger once filled with water. Fast forward, it didn't, and I had to redesign the mounts. Here goes the second bucket mount. I even had to learn some yoga to flip this table alone. I cut out the second plywood cover, but this time I used the previously cut piece of plywood as the guide because it should also have a straight edge. I filled around 75 liters of water into each bucket. And then attach the tabletop to them. I ran more tests and I wasn't satisfied with the rigidity at all. I found that bucket covers acted as cushions that allowed the tabletop to twist and move up and down. This was unacceptable, so I had to rethink my design. I decided to try cutting out the soft part of the bucket covers. This time, I had to use the countersinking screws because the screw caps will touch the bucket's edge and I wanted them to be flat with the surface. I did the same modifications with the second mount. Feels like IKEA. There was no up and down play or twist anymore. There was still some movement from side to side, but it will be gone once the table has all 4 legs. This test was successful. I was surprised how fast I could make the second table. After it was done, I tested it again, and this time it was much stronger. At first, I wanted to attach the 2 halves of the table to each other using door hinges, so that they can easily fold. But after some thinking, I decided I don't need that degree of portability, and it would be simpler to just use a plywood leftover between the doors. If I will ever need to move to another house, I will be able to unscrew it easily. Now the table got really rigid and solid, and it had no play whatsoever. The machine fits perfectly on it. Before finishing the table, I rounded the edges with a router. When it comes to making furniture in our family, my wife usually takes care of all the finishing, painting and gluing tasks. So from this moment, she was in charge. We start filling in all the holes with putty and sanding those spots after drying. Sanding furniture can take long, but it's an easy and meditative work, and the results are always satisfying. Now the table was ready for painting. We didn't have much choice of paint in our hardware store. I picked up this white flat wall enamel, and we made a big mistake not shaking it before opening. So it was very thin on the top and very thick at the bottom. We applied more putty after the first layer dried and sanded the whole table once again. And then we applied the second layer of paint. Sometimes we just can't stop sanding and filling wood because each iteration makes the piece look better, and we call ourselves Better Furniture after all. I drafted a couple of patterns that I wanted to apply to the tabletop just to make it less boring in YouTube videos. The first design was too complex, but because most of the table will be covered by the CNC machine most of the time, we went with some random flow of blue lines that were inspired by electrical schemes and waterfalls. We used masking tape to trace out the lines because it's very easy to correct any errors before applying the actual paint. Although it may look like I know what I'm doing, that was my first time using masking tape for its real purpose. This time, we invested more efforts into shaking the paint before opening. I wanted to choose a color that is close to the color of the buckets, but this one was the only blue our local hardware store had. The blue paint is glossy, while the white paint is flat. At first I was concerned about this inconsistency, but it turned out to look even more interesting this way.
And behold, the blue whale is born. I really like how glossy lines look on flat surface. And overall, I am really satisfied with this build. This table exceeded my expectations in every aspect. It is really heavy, it is strong, big, and I still can disassemble it alone and transfer to another house if needed. And it's affordable. Let's take a look at the cost. So I bought those two cheapest flush doors I could find for $32 each. And because they're so cheap and the shell is so thin, I had to buy this 1/8" plywood, which is 3mm plywood, 4 sheets. If you can spend more, a little bit more on the doors, do it. If you can find doors with a thicker shell,
then maybe it's worth buying, because you will skip all this plywood mess. Next, I bought 4 100-liter buckets for $15 each. And if you can find buckets with a flat cover, maybe go for it. I spent 2 packs of number 8 screws, 3/4 inches, which is 18 millimeters. For finishing, I bought 2 cans of paint, masking tape, sanding paper, rollers, brushes, and thinner, and that all costed me around $20. So if we calculate the total, this all will be $181.34. This is the total price of this table, and I think that's the cheapest option of everything that I considered. So this table meets the final requirement of being affordable. Now I can finally assemble my CNC machine and continue designing the furniture for it. Please show me your CNC machines in the comments below, hit the like button, subscribe, and see you in the next video.